What up, YouTube? Today we're making another big step forward on the 460 rebuild. Today we're going to get all the pistons put back in. Stay tuned. Alright, so I've gone ahead and I got all of my piston rings on, and I got this piston with the gaps set where I want them. You just don't want your piston ring gaps to be close to each other. So we got a gap here, and then another gap there, and then the oil ring gaps are kind of tiny. You can't really see those, but they are spread all apart. We got a new bearing in here, and I'm about to put the piston in, the first one, this cylinder one. I put some heat shrink tubing on there just to kind of protect the cylinder and the crankshaft from those studs. And I also took the top ring and I put it in the cylinder, each cylinder actually, at the top, and then I took a piston and I pushed it down to the bottom. I checked it at the top and at the bottom, and Ford's spec on this is 10 to 20 thousandths, and we're at about 22 to 23 thousandths on each side, and so we're a little above spec. But I did a little research, and from what I can tell, or from what I saw anyway, it looks like a slightly larger gap isn't going to hurt us as bad as a slightly smaller gap. I could try to get another set of rings, but I got these pistons and these rings from the guy that at the machine shop that did the boring, that bored it 30 over for me and polished the crankshaft and everything. So I'd have to, find a way to return these and find a set that works, and I honestly think that it's going to be okay. Worst case, we have a slight amount of blow-by and slightly less power than we could have, but this is not going to be a race engine, and I want to build it in a way where it's going to last rather than, super high horsepower or whatever. I'd like that spec to be a little closer to the range that it's supposed to be in, but I don't think it's going to be a huge deal, and honestly, it would be kind of a pain at this stage of the game to try to get some new rings. So I think I'm going to roll with it. The engine's obviously not going to be in the car before this video goes out, so if anyone has any huge objections to that, please let me know in the comments. Like I said, the spec is 10 to 20 thousandths. They don't really specify which ring, so I just did the top ring. I've also read that the second compression ring needs to be larger gap than the top one, and I can just tell when the spring is fully opened that it has a larger gap, so I can only assume it would have a larger gap when it's closed as well. So I didn't actually check any rings other than the top ring. So if somebody thinks that I should do something different before it's too late, definitely let me know. But by the time this video is over, we're going to probably have all the pistons in, so it'll be kind of a pain in the ass to turn around, but it's not necessarily too late. I think we're going to be okay, but I'm definitely interested to hear what your guys' opinions are on the slightly too large ring gap. So now I'm going to take some oil and I'm going to put it all on the piston, not crazy, just a little bit. I've already got oil in the cylinders, and then I'm going to go ahead and put this piston into the cylinder, and then I'm going to flip the engine around. Well, I'll probably put the cap on hand tight so it doesn't slide out. It probably won't, but I'm going to put the cap on hand tight. We'll flip it around, put some plastic gauge on it, torque it, and check them one at a time. It's cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm probably going to install them 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, 4, 8. And I'm going to spin it a couple times between each one just to make sure that everything is still moving freely. And assuming that our plastic gauge measurements are good and we're not sticking and everything's spinning freely, then I'll probably call that the end of the video. Pretty much the bottom end will be done, and then we can put the timing set on and the timing cover and water pump. I don't actually have the timing cover, or excuse me, I don't have a new water pump yet. We still have this old busted one over here. It's not really busted, it's just old and really rusty on the inside. So we're definitely going to get a new one of those. It's like 250 bucks. And then shortly after that, the procedure calls for putting the power steering pump back on, because it is crankshaft driven. I've got this $200 rebuild kit here with all the seals and everything we need for it. I've had that for quite some time, actually. So we're going to be doing that shortly as well. That's probably going to be a separate video, that power steering pump rebuild, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and work on getting this first piston installed. And of course, my piston ring compressor, on only the second or third time I've ever needed to use it. I've had this tool for probably 15 years, honestly. This is, believe it or not, one of the first specialty tools anyway that I had. And of course, it is not big enough for a big block when it's fully expanded. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to call it quits for a moment so I can buy a piston ring compressor that will fit these big block pistons. Alright, so as you guys can see, we've got two blank holes, and we got a piston there, a piston there, a piston there, piston there, piston there, and piston there. So we've got 6 pistons in. I still need to put in the last 2. Didn't want to bore you guys with putting every single one in, but I am going to show you how I'm putting these in. So I've got the crankshaft journal turned to where it's basically facing straight up here. I was flipping it over and then flipping it back and then flipping it over and flipping it back, but I decided it's much easier to just put the pistons in from the bottom and then do what you need to do up here and not really have to flip it. So I'm going to try to show that on camera. If it doesn't look very good, then we'll just we'll flip it over, but I think it'll turn out all right. So I am going to basically show you what I've been doing. Here's the next piston. This is going to be number 4. So if the engine was right side up, then this is going to be the passenger side. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 on the passenger side. And you might be able to see, yeah, there's the 1, there's the 2, 3. So we need to put in the 4. And then over here is the 5, 6, 7, and we still need to put in the 8. And this is going to be the driver's side, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I've been just putting it in 1, 5, 2, 6, 3, 7, and now 4, 8. And so anyway, we've got our piston here. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of engine oil and I'm filling the cap with oil, and then I'm dumping that down into the cylinder and using my hand and wiping it all into the cylinder. So that's going to be step 1 for putting a piston in. Just pouring it in from the top. Don't want to get the camera dirty, so I'm going to do that afterwards. But once you pour oil down in here, you can stick your hand in from the bottom and wipe it all in the cylinder, and then take your same hand or glove or whatever and come over here and wipe it all on the piston sides and skirts and everything. You also want to orient your bearings, or excuse me, your rings, where they're basically like in an X pattern. So you've got your bottom oil ring here, roughly, the gap in it. You've got your top oil ring roughly here, and then one compression ring here, and then another one about here. So you're looking at basically like, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock, and like 6 or 7. Somewhere in that range is how I'm getting my bearings, or I don't know why I keep calling them bearings, my piston rings adjusted. So these would probably be okay right here, the gaps on the compression rings. I gotta find where the oil ring gaps are, but I'm gonna turn them to about here and here, and then I'm gonna get oil on everything, and then I've still got to loosen these nuts here as well to get the cap off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. Alright, so we got our cylinders lubed up, both of them, and I've got the cap off on the 4 cylinder here, or the 4 rod. So I've got one of the bearings placed in. Now I need to take another bearing and put it into the rod itself, making sure that the notches line up, and then making sure that the tops of the bearing are even with the tops of the rod. And then you want to kind of clean these up as good as you can, wipe off any oil. Same thing with the cap. And then we're going to go ahead and put this ring compressor over it, making sure our gaps are in kind of an X pattern. And then we'll move to the next step. Alright, so I've got the piston ring compressor. I got it spread out big enough to slide over all of the rings. And then we've got our bearing in the rod. And so I got this cranked down about as good as I possibly could, and I've got it well past the rings. So the rings should be like somewhere in here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take it over here with the number side facing the outside of the block. So when we put it in, the number side is going to be facing us. And also, this dot on the piston right here is supposed to face the front of the engine. So it's supposed to face this way. So now I'm going to take that and then I'm going to set it up against the deck of the block, get it in there as far as I can. And then I'm going to take this hammer and I'm going to kind of hold it like this. And then I'm going to push the piston up in there until the bearing bottoms out on the crankshaft journal. Alright, so dot towards the front. And the number is on the outside. So we're going to push this up in there. And also, when you're doing this, you want to push the ring compressor against the deck of the block as much as you can. And also, it's a little bit tricky to get the piston started because the skirts are a very, very tight fit. This stuff here is machined perfect, you know. So then you want to make sure that it's not cocked sideways or anything. You want to make sure that it's still going up straight. And then, I almost forgot a very important step. We want to take these, I got a couple pieces of heat shrink tubing. You could probably get by without it if you got a helper, but I'm going to take these little pieces of heat shrink tubing and put them on the studs there like that, and that way we don't damage anything when we are pushing this up in there, because it's going to take basically 3 hands to do all of what I'm doing. So once we get it in there again, we can push on the ring compressor real good. Oh, come on. Come on now. There we go. And it's not cocked sideways. So now we want to push on it. Push on it real good. And then knock it in. Make sure you're still straight on your rod. And the piston is in. Now we're going to move up top. Alright, and now that we're done with our ring compressor, we want to make sure it's still good and straight. And then kind of line up the rod with the journal here. Keep in mind, we are keeping this bearing dry for right now. And then we're going to tap it up all the way until it bottoms out against the journal. There we go. Now remember, we are tapping with the wood. We are not tapping with any sort of metal at all. Also, we did lubricate the cylinders with oil before we're pushing it up in there. Now we can remove our condoms that go on the studs here. And now we want to check and make sure that our bearing is still level and even, which thankfully it is. Sometimes it can move. Now, the normal way to do this is, of course, to do it from the top and then flip it over and all that. But I personally just found it much easier to do it this way. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get some plastic gauge cut. And we're going to check the bearing clearance on the pistons, or the rods rather, just like we did on the main caps. Alright, so I've got a piece of red plastic gauge on there. I ran out of the green. We actually want it to be 0.8 thousandths to 1.5 thousandths. So basically 0.0008 of an inch to 0.0015 of an inch. Now, the most squished reading that you can get out of this red plastic gauge is 2 thousandths. So we need this to be basically fatter than the widest measurement here. I really should be using the green plastic gauge on this, but this is the last two things that I need to use it for. And so here's 2 thousandths, this big wide one, so we want it to be wider than that. Every single other one has checked out at 1.5 thousandths, which is right at the top of spec, but it is still within the specification. So I really don't have any reason to believe that these are going to be out of spec, but this is more so just to kind of show you guys the process for putting these pistons in and what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep the nuts on the same stud that they came from. I really don't think that that matters too much, but I'm doing it anyway. Same thing with the keeping the nuts face up the way they were before. And so we're going to go ahead and tighten this down. Torque spec, there's a range. I believe it said 40 to 45 foot-pounds on this one. So I've just been going 45 because it seems kind of low to me to have such a low torque spec on such an important part. So I am maxing out the range that you're allowed, which is 45 foot-pounds. I'm also trying to make sure that I tighten these up as evenly as I reasonably can. Also trying not to shake the engine too much. There's a click. There's our other click, and then I go back and check again. There's a click. There's another click. Okay, so now we can loosen those back up and see how flat our plastic gauge got. Also trying my best to loosen them evenly as well. Alright, so I got the cap off, and here's the mark that it left. And it looks like we are exactly at the 2 thousandths there. However, all the other ones went to 1.5. So it's possible that this only goes to 2 thousandths. It can't squish any farther than that, and maybe that's what the issue is. I'm really not too sure. But that's what I'm doing to check and make sure everything's good. And then we'll go ahead and torque this down. So I chose the perfect one to show you guys on. So I don't know if I'm repeating myself or not, because I've been coming back to this multiple times over multiple days trying to get it all right. But these other rod bearings here were all measuring at 1.5 thousandths, which is right at the top of spec, and that's good enough for me. And these two were higher than that at 2 thousandths. And so in the last clip you guys saw the plastic gauge, and I got these special bearings here for this engine, but they're supposed to be 1,000th undersize. And the math doesn't really add up, because it should have brought me down to 1,000th of clearance instead of 2 if it was 1,000th undersize. However, it only brought me to the 1.5 thousandths, but it's still measuring what we want it to be. So I've got the exact same bearing here. So these two rods are both going to get the special bearings, the undersized ones. So I'm going to check this one with plastic gauge and show you guys that it should get us to that 1.5 thousandths at least, and then we can finally lock this last one down, not forgetting to lubricate it with assembly lube, of course. I'm going to tap the rod back down, lubricate the bottom bearing, tap it back up, lube the cap, and then put it on. Alright, so we got the plastic gauge, and we are much closer now. It is definitely fatter than the 2 thousandths. Closer to that 1.5, so that's much better. And the guy at the machine shop that did the work for me, he said that 2 thousandths isn't even bad. Even though Ford's specification is lower than that, he said that it should be just fine with that, and he's been working on this kind of stuff for 40 years. So I think we're probably okay. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe this off of the cap and the crankshaft. We're going to finally torque this last one down for the last time. Alright, now that I got the last one in, I went ahead and rotated it around a few times. The crankshaft, not the engine, I did that too, but I turned the crankshaft a few times, make sure everything's still spinning freely. We got all our pistons in with our dots facing forward. As you can see, they're all 30 over pistons. And then here's the other side. Once again, dots are all facing forward. And that is looking beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. We got brand new pistons in there and freshened up cylinders. This is going to be one bad 460. 467 now, actually. But anyways, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and put the timing chain on. And what do you know, I almost happened to stop it perfectly. What are the odds of that? That is all coincidence, by the way. But it does still need to be turned just a tad bit more, and then we can put the timing chain on once they're dot to dot. I'm basically just going to line them up with this line here. I think that might be the intention. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll put our chain on. This gear is locked down, but this one is not. So we'll probably use that to get it on. And that's going to be the end of the video for today, guys. Hope you all enjoyed. Please give me a thumbs up if you are liking these Lincoln videos and you've been staying tuned with this project since the beginning. If you got any questions or comments on the project, I'd love to hear them. Go ahead and put those in the comments below. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. Otherwise, check out one of these videos, and I will see you on the next one.